Right. Well, good morning. Thanks for coming around at this early hour. My name is Thomas Röggla. I come to you from the National Institute of Mathematics and Computer Science in Amsterdam, Netherlands. And today I'm going to talk to you about a project that we run, which is called From the Lab to the OB Truck, where we went from a series of lab studies to deploying our multi-screen broadcasting at the FA Cup final in London in 2018. So we went from planning to lots of programming to running a series of interviews to, yes, the final deployment at the actual stadium during the game in London. To give you a little bit of context, this little project was part of a bigger EU-funded project called To Immerse, which aimed to develop a platform for interactive, immersive multi-screen broadcasting, and it involved partners from all over Europe. Most notably in this part of the project, it was us, CWI, the BBC, British Telecom, and a company from Sweden called Kegel, which they mostly deal with live on-screen graphics targeted at mostly sport events. The platform is a decentralized microservice architecture. It has been open sourced a couple months back. We ran a couple trials with owners of high-profile content, mostly sports content. For instance, the MotoGP, and as we're talking about in this presentation, the FA Cup. The project also had a very successful presence at the International Broadcast Convention in 2018 and won a series of awards as well. So during the development of the project, we faced a series of challenges. The first one of these challenges was to actually understand how live broadcasting works, what are the roles and workflows involved in creating live sports broadcasts. As you see here, you have a lot of screens, a lot of panels, a lot of buttons, and you have a lot of people that work together, and everyone needs to depend on everybody else in a truck in order to guarantee a timely delivery of the broadcast. So this is the typical inside of a outside broadcast truck. You have screens here on top. You have a director which is calling the shots. You have a series of producers. You have people that are responsible for audio. You have people that are responsible for on-screen graphics, and a series of people who are, they communicate with the main studio, they prepare replays, things like that. And the second big challenge in our project was and the second another challenge in the project was to integrate the architecture that you have on site, the cameras, the video delivery infrastructure, to integrate it with the existing To Immerse platform. Here on the site you see you have the cameras in the stadium, and for us they need to run to an encoder, and the video data goes into the CDN, which is then delivered to people's homes. And also we have in our truck we have the production tools, and which facilitate how the broadcast comes together and where things go on screen and all of this. And then we had, of course, to actually deploy the thing at the FA Cup final and make sure it shows up at people's homes. And in order to do this, we made use of a broadcasting method called object-based broadcasting, which differs from traditional broadcasting in that instead of the content being assembled at the truck on site, all assets are usually transmitted via the internet, and they're only assembled at people's homes. This means that the content can adapt itself dynamically to different screen sizes, different devices, and it can also distribute itself to multiple screens and offer also interactive content where people watching the football game, they can interact with other people, they can pull up statistics and tap into live feeds of data and different cameras, choose their own camera angles. And yes, in order to facilitate this, we implemented a series of production tools. Usually the production process, as we understood, for live events involves the pre-production of pre-recorded content, such as interview, maybe highlights from the last match, things like that. Then you have on-site editing of live content from the cameras on the pitch. Of course, audio mixing and audio and video mixing and insertion of on-screen graphics. Finally, transmission of the finished broadcast to people's homes. As I said, the pre-production process is actually a lengthy process. You have to prepare lists of players, data, graphics, things like that. And all of this is already very well served by existing software, and professionals, they know how to use the software. And we also found that this is sort of difficult to integrate with object-based broadcasting, because it's really targeted at traditional linear broadcasting. So we developed a tool, a pre-production tool, which sort of tries to, instead of replacing any workflows, it tried to augment workflows. It allows the producers to sort of compose a high-level structure of their program in terms of a sequence of events. You have pre-match content, for example, and you have a couple interviews. Then you have your live stream of the actual match, and then you have maybe the break, the second half of the match, and post-match interviews. And it sort of allows you to put together this high-level structures and insert pre-recorded assets, but also placeholders for live streams, which then at the actual broadcast are then actually filled in by the by the match, the live match. So, and during the live phase, the production teams also need to be able to react to events that might happen. For example, in a motorcycle race, this might be a crash. In a football match, this might be a foul or a goal, and you also might want to see different replays. These events, they are likely to happen. One might say in a football match you even want them to happen, but the thing is you don't know when they are going to be happening. And for this we implemented yet another tool called the live triggering tool. It consists of an interface like this. You have these big buttons, they are predefined. You have things like name tags for players, for the referee. You have the little score clock in the corner and the goal counter and all of this. And this interface allows a graphics editor to sort of, on cue of the director, bring up a little interface to fill in names and cue them. This is then pushed to a second interface which looks very similar, and from here, so all the events that are configured in this interface are then queued up here, and on command of the director, clicking the button here inserts them into the actual broadcast. We found also that while studying the going-ons in an OB truck, we found that TV professionals, they're very much used to big buttons and hardware devices. So we found this little thing. It's called Stream Deck. It's actually a device that is meant for, I'd say, Twitch streamers. And it has 15 buttons, and each one of these buttons is backed by a 72-pixel LCD. So you can actually plug this into the laptop and trigger the content from this thing. And in our interviews, producers are very impressed with this, because this is really something that they are used to be working with and felt very natural to them. Here I have a quick video of the whole process, if it works. Now you'll see foul. There you go. The director might say, I want to see a name tag for the player that has committed the foul. Name selected, yellow card, number 4, little subtitle. So it shows up on the little board, and the director says, I want to see it now. Press the button. There it goes, and it shows up on screen. And once you're done with it, you press the button again. It gets removed again. So in order to evaluate this and make sure that it is usable for live teams, we ran a series of field studies where we interviewed professionals and asked them to evaluate the software that we had put together. and iteratively we use this to improve the UI and the UX of our tools, which then resulted in the software that you just saw. And then finally, we also ran, before the actual final, during the semi-finals, we ran a couple of pre-tests to ensure that we have a smooth deployment of the whole thing. Yeah, the software was then finally deployed at the final of the FA Cup in London, in Wembley Stadium in May 2018. Our project partners at BT, they helped us organize our own little OB truck with all the screens and all the hardware to tap into the actual live streams of the match that are being recorded on the pitch. And we tried to replicate the actual broadcast. It was going out to people's homes through the TV. Tried to replicate this using our platform, and it was transmitted to people's households to a select few of households where people had their own Tumos set-up box. This is sort of what the home deployment looks like. Here you see this is TV, and you see the mainstream. It looks very much like we try to replicate pretty much exactly what you see in the traditional broadcast. But on top of that, people received additional content on their companion devices, maybe tablets or phones, and you had different interfaces where you could customize what you see on the tablet and also what you see on the main screen, and you can pull up information, player information, statistics, things like that. There's another quick video. I think you see a penalty, and you see a person here with the tablet. They pull up the coach camera on the main screen and just see the coach's reaction to the... Yeah, there you go. There's a goal. So you have your content on multiple screens, and you can customize what you want to see. Finally, lessons learned. Live TV productions, very strictly defined workflows. It's a very well-oiled machine, and everybody needs to rely on everybody else. Also, during our interviews, we found that it was very hard to gain access to broadcast professionals because they're very busy people, and they have tight schedules. Moreover, rights holders, especially of this high-profile content, they're very protective of their content. So it's very hard to actually develop trials and demos because they're very scared that you might do something with their content that they don't necessarily like. And on top of that, also production teams, because it all if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Production teams are somewhat reluctant to adopt new workflows. So really, the trick is we want tools that augment and enhance existing workflows. Because of our high-profile content and trials we ran, we had a quite successful presentation of the platform at the International Broadcast Conference. We won a couple Best Paper Awards and at multiple conferences and industry awards, for example, the HBB TV Symposium. Also, talking with professionals at the IBC, everybody was convinced that object-based broadcasting has a future especially now because a lot of stuff is moving to on-demand broadcasting, to the internet, things like that. And also, it was very good for our commercial partners like Trimby, like the BT and BBC, because they broadcast sports, and their business is really broadcast graphics. It really allowed them to try out new technologies and see how they might perform on the market, and give them the chance to have a small-scale deployment of these new technologies. Again, I want to point you, if you're interested in the software, I want to point you to the GitHub where we open sourced the entire platform a couple of months back. Especially if you're interested in the software in this talk, you should check out the editor and the trigger launcher repositories. It is still somewhat being developed, but I think it's in good shape now. And with this, I'd like to thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions, please.
I ask a first question. Well, actually, I'm a media scholar, a mass media, new media scholar. I'm wondering, the software you build often is supposed to solve some challenges and problems the broadcasters are facing, right? So in your case, you mentioned that broadcasting professionals are very busy, they're resistant maybe to completely new technology. So what are the existing challenges they face that this particular software helps them to solve, right? That the existing broadcasting system cannot really do, right?
It mainly helps them to traditional broadcasting. It really allows you to have content on a single screen, whereas with this system, it makes it very easy to have multi-screen interactive broadcasting onto multiple screens, and it allows you to do all of this from a centralized location. So whereas now you might have your football match and you might have additional apps. You always have to download, for every program you have to download a different app. Whereas the broadcast is sent out by these people, whereas the app is under control of someone else completely, maybe even a different company. Whereas this whole thing is one architecture where you can broadcast to multiple things from one centralized location. It's all very well integrated and goes to one place in the home, and you just sit down on your couch, you turn on the TV, you get the tablet, and there you go.
So for the users can use multiple devices,
exactly,
right?
So on one side, it makes it easier for producers to actually produce this content, and I think it also makes it more convenient for people to tap into and consume this content.
I see. Okay, thanks. Any other questions? Yes, please.
So now that you're talking about the end user, like people in their living room, like did you have any interviews or did you get any reactions from people who use this multi-device?
So far only really within the project. So the project ended 2 months ago. So I think now the BBC and BT, they have a vested interest. So I think they're going to pursue this further and maybe try to integrate this in actual TV programs now. But so far it's only been more or less within the project. But the people that we did interview, they were very interested, and they did ask us to keep them updated about further developments.
Other questions? Yes.
Yeah, I was just curious about broadcasts have commercials. So is this the kind of, are they using that for that aspect as well? Like, for instance, I could see, an advertisement on the main screen and then say a link on your tablet to buy the product. Is that something that they may be pursuing in future?
Yeah, it's definitely possible. We've also, actually in one of the interviews we had someone, bringing up different ideas. You could also integrate things like, maybe a bit of a borderline idea, but you could integrate something like gambling. That's something one of them said. I think it does make sense in a way. You have your maybe a horse race on screen, and and you have your tablet, and you can bet on horses. Well, if that's a good thing or not, I don't know, but it's